This election was a climate protection election. This election was an election for democracy. For human rights, for a cosmopolitan Europe. And that's why the votes which are making us happy are not just green votes. They are votes for climate protection. They are votes for democracy. They are votes against far-right populism. They are votes for human rights in all of Europe, dear friends.
All right, celebrations there with the Greens. We have our chief political correspondent, Melinda Crane, with us in our studio. Melinda, if we took a headline away from this vote, it would be, you know, the Green wave, 20.6% according to the results we have so far, the second biggest party. And there's another figure I want to look at with you that I think we can bring in here as well that is pretty indicative of how well the Greens have been doing. They take a look here, if we have this, at the youth vote. So the people here voting in Germany under the age of 30, they show that 35% of all German voters under 24, have voted Green. And as you can see, the older the voters get, the less likely they are to vote for the Greens. So, Melinda, these are pretty astonishing figures, and also the success in general. What do you make of this?
Fascinating. Well, climate is the generational issue, isn't it? And we've seen that very clearly demonstrated for the last few months as all over Europe, thousands of young people took to the streets every Friday, skipping school to protest the fact that their governments and politicians in general weren't doing enough about climate change. But a lot of people were concerned in the run-up to this election that nonetheless those young people who go to the streets wouldn't go to the ballot box because, in fact, youth turnout is often very, very low, particularly in EU elections. That does not appear to be the case this time around. We still don't, I think, have exact figures on youth turnout, but turnout in general has been high, and clearly turnout, particularly for parties like the Greens, very high indeed. A couple of messages go out from this result that we see here in Germany for the Greens. First of all, message to national politicians. We expect more. The fact is, the coalition's policy on climate and on environment has been quite muddled. If we think of the diesel scandal involving Germany's automakers, if we think of all the debate about bans on diesel emissions in cities, but especially if we look at the really painful discussion around phasing out burning brown coal. So all of that, a message to national politicians. Also, clearly voters ascribing competence to the EU at EU level on environment. We've seen that in a lot of surveys. We see it in this election result. That's good news for Europe moving ahead on ambitious climate policy. So one last thing. Green parties are winning in several other European countries as well, are doing quite well. Austria, Ireland, France. That means we are going to see a bigger block of seats in the next EU Parliament for the Greens. That gives them more bargaining power. With those big parties shrinking, they will be required to do more deals with parties like the Greens in future. And again, that can put some dynamism in EU climate policy.
Really interesting takeaways there, and really showing the shifting political landscape, as you said, Melinda. If it's a message to the traditional parties, we also have to say it's a message to Chancellor Angela Merkel's Conservatives. They got around 8 points less than they had gotten the last time, a little bit less than they had hoped for. The CDU's party head, Annegret Kramp-Karrenbauer, was speaking a little bit earlier. Let's listen to what she had to say about their results.
This election result is not the result that we, as a party of the people, expect of ourselves. We will meet next weekend and analyse the results, but now, tonight, we can clearly say that there are several reasons that led to these results. For one, yes, certainly we have not been dynamic enough in government, and we have failed to give convincing answers that voters across Germany have rightly expected of us.
All right, Melinda, we heard her say there, essentially, we got the message. We haven't performed well enough. We haven't delivered. But is this really a continuation of this trend that we've seen in German politics, also across Europe, the splintering of the middle, the political middle?
Absolutely. Just one fact. Since 1949, the first two places in every election on national level were reserved for the Christian Democrats with the Bavarian sister party and for the Social Democrats. This is historic. we are seeing the Greens in second place. I cannot underline enough what kind of a massive tectonic shift that represents. Secondly, here for Annegret Kramp-Karrenbauer, she is not only the head of the Christian Democratic Party, she's the designated successor, or, you know, the thought is that she would be the next chancellor. But this historic record low for the CDU has happened in the first election that she essentially has supervised as party leader, meaning this is also quite problematic for her. We are absolutely seeing a drift away from these big tent parties. There are a lot of reasons for that, some of them structural, some of them long-term, some of them trans-European, too complex perhaps to go into here. But this is a very decided trend with big disadvantages for these two parties that are currently governing Germany together.
Yeah, what does that mean then for the stability of this government? The Social Democrats, as you said, also performing, taking a big hit at the polls.
Indeed. They also have seen their lowest record low performance. Well, if you listen to what everybody's saying on the record from both parties, they're saying, oh, this is not going to affect the Grand Coalition. We must continue together. We must essentially renew our messages and take them to the people. But the fact is, this is a definite, a real blow for the Social Democrats. This historic party coming in third place with all kinds of questions within the party about whether they are able to really have any kind of political identity anymore in this Grand Coalition, where even when they put their own agendas, issues on the agenda, they don't seem to get credit from the voters. There's been a lot of behind-the-scenes rumors about whether there might be a leadership putsch after the EU election. We've heard young members of the party saying we don't want to continue in this coalition that is so problematic for us. Now, whether we'll see a fragmentation soon is very, very unclear at the moment, but expect a lot of discussion and turbulence in coming weeks.
All right, we'll be talking more about this through the course of the evening. Our chief political correspondent, Melinda Crane. Thank you, Melinda. All right, let's go back to Brussels now, where Max Hoffmann is standing by for us. Hi, Max. So we've been just talking with Melinda about some of the bigger trends we're seeing here. Some of the numbers are becoming a bit clearer here. What is your take on this there in Brussels? Is it safe to say that we're also seeing this continuation of the splintering of the middle and the rise of other parties like the Greens, for example? What do we take away from this?
What we have is a fragmentation. You know, it was a no-brainer in the past, also in Germany, but now also on a European level, that if you had the two biggest parties, the Social Democrats and the Conservatives, in this case the European People's Parties, that you would have a majority. That is no longer the case, meaning it'll take 3 to 4 different factions in the European Parliament to have a majority, and that will change the way policy will be made. That will change the emphasis, what they are talking about, which kind of policy is important. We talked to a lot of people tonight here, and it seems that climate change, fighting climate change, will be on the front burner now, something that was on the back burner in the past, because you have the Greens in the picture. You can really talk about a green wave throughout Europe now, because not only in Germany the Greens have had good results, but also in France with about 13%. That's pretty new, you know, unseen before. So this will make things more complicated, but for now it seems like those parties, the Greens, the Liberals, the Conservatives, and also the Social Democrats, will be able to keep the right-wing populists out of the picture. But, you know, think about this. It is likely that at least either the League from Matteo Salvini in Italy, so right-wing populist party, or the Brexit party from the UK will provide the biggest national group in the European Parliament. So even if the other parties are able to deal with this now through coalitions, if this trend continues, then at some point it will reach breaking point, and it will no longer be able to exclude the right-wing populists from the decision-making in the European Parliament.
All right, a fragmenting landscape there in Brussels. That picture, as we said, slowly becoming clearer as the night progresses. Max Hoffmann for us. We'll talk to you a little bit later, Max. Thank you.